Thank you, Dr. Eleni, for that lovely presentation. Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining me on the second edition of Webinar Day 1, Design Your Biobanking Strategy. I have no conflict of interest or commercial bias to declare related to my presentation. The objective for my presentation is to demonstrate the quality tools to ensure quality in a human biobank, linking quality tools in Qatar Biobank, identifying the challenges and opportunities. These are the basic stages of biobanking through which a biospecimen travels before its utilization in research. Any minuscule mismanagement may lead to a quality degradation of the biospecimen and the resulting data. Therefore, it is critical maintaining meticulous efforts in any aspect concerning the samples and data. QBB began its pilot phase in 2012. Since then, we focused on governance and ELSI. Biobanks need to be ethically robust, legally compliant with legal frameworks, and supported by the community to benefit from a long-term research. As Dr. Eleni mentioned, the governance in ELSI is a key component. QBB unified its ELSI framework through scientific committees and IRB obtained through Ministry of Public Health, Qatar. We will have more details on this on our webinar day 5. Process standardization. Secondly, standardizing our procedures and records is always crucial. QBB ensures its documents are well structured and periodically reviewed for updates in the protocol, technology, or regulatory practices. Infrastructure. To avoid as much as possible the human interventions, thereby reducing errors, we prioritized automizing workflows. In 2015-16, QBB invested resources in automizing workflows for clinic, lab, and research. Staff training and competencies. Fourthly, ensuring that staff is adequately trained and competent to perform consents, questionnaire, and use of validated equipment. QBB ensures training from manufacturers, technical and application specialists is provided frequently. A training and competency framework was created to ensure required training was provided and monitored regularly for competencies. License. As mandated by Qatar's national regulations, we applied for clinical and lab staff and facility licensing. The staff licensing requires verifications of credentials from the university, a good standard certificate from their home country, about 40 CPT points annually, medical fitness certificate, etc. The staff license renewal with Qatar's Ministry of Public Health is every 2 years. We also applied for various types of facility licenses, and this will be explained more on our webinar day 5. Risk planning. For risk assessment, QBB used BBMRI framework to obtain SWOT analysis, business continuity plan, financial viability plan. These kind of assessment allowed us to plan better our daily operations and long-term resource requirements. Quality certifications. Finally, quality certifications are vital to any business. The decision of opting the standard is up to every biobank. Quality certifications greatly improved the processes in QBB. Our journey started in 2012 with establishing legal frameworks. We did this using Ministry of Public Health, Qatar guidelines, and ISBER practices. In 2014, we obtained ISO 9001-2008 and ISO 27001-2013 certifications. In 2017, we were certified for ISO 9001-2015 and certified for 27001-2013. In 2020, we obtained CAP accreditation for the diagnostic lab. In In 2020, we renewed our CAP accreditation and also achieved the ISO Biobanking certificate. As Qatar Biobank is one of its kind to be established in Qatar and the region, we took every effort to start right. Over the decade as we evolved, we adopted in our strategy planning and daily operations the ISBER best practices, ISO standards, CLSI guidelines, CAP checklist, industry best practices, and manufacturer recommendations. I will demonstrate few scenarios of how we implemented each of these tools to the best of our capability and enhanced our products and services. As stated in ISBER Best Practices 3rd edition of 2012, the repository should implement small-scale pilot studies to validate new protocols, equipment, laboratory tests, or testing services when possible. Pilot or feasibility studies can identify problems or critical points and instigate preventive actions at an early stage of collection, handling, and processing before a larger study is undertaken. QBB followed this practice, creating a 2-year pilot run on all aspects of operations from 2012 to 2014. The pilot study not only helped us to determine new processes and identifying training required before implementing new protocol, but we also released medical findings. In this slide, I would like to give you a glimpse of the 3 ISOs with their respective clauses implemented in QBB. The first image are the clauses of the ISO 9001:2015 of the quality management systems. The second image are the clauses of the ISO 27001:2013 of the information security management systems. The third image are the clauses of ISO 2387:2018 of the biobanking standards. Amongst these, the ones in the green circle are common amongst them, while the orange circles are uncommon. In Qatar Biobank, to record, evaluate, and monitor our non-conformities, we use a tool or a form called action request. This slide is an example of how, starting with ISO 9001:2008, later ISO 9001:2015, and transitioning to ISO 2387, we had improved the process of controlling non-conformities in QBB. In the year 2013, we started with a paper version of the action request form to capture the corrective action and opportunities for improvement. This form had to be manually filled and moved from desk to desk. For more complex action requests or non-conformities, an interdepartmental meeting was called for. Since we were still in the pilot phase, we had many action requests which called for better management. In the year 2017, with increase in staff and process, an action request committee was formed to manage this process. The form was now semi-automated and available on QBB portal. This has also greatly helped in complying with ISMS standards. In 2022, while we implemented the 2387 biobanking standards, the clause 7.11.2.1 states the risk, the biobank shall mitigate the impacts of non-conformity, implement corrective actions in proportion to the risk presented by non-conforming output, and prevent reoccurrence. Hence, we integrated risk-based approach within this form. The form is assigned, reassigned, or escalated through QBB platform, making them efficient and transparent for audit purposes. Risk is calculated by both risk owners before and after the corrective actions are taken. If residual risk is still high, QBB management is further notified for corrective actions and provision of resources. The Research Access Office was established in 2014. Hence, these activities were not included in the ISO certification scope in 2014. In 2015, we initiated pilot study for our samples delivery to researchers on a small scale. With the increase in research requirements, the request for research access projects increased. We developed research access policy, procedure, and work instructions to streamline this process. We will provide more insight on this during our day 5 of the webinar. During the ISO 2387 implementation and to satisfy the clause of 7.12.2 content of the report, we did a major improvement in the lab quality report. As you can see on the right, our report template provides all three phases of sample life cycle, that is pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical information immediately to our researchers. In 2014, our infrastructure was minimal and under development. We used tons and tons of printed forms, logs, checklists, and records. These had to be controlled on desks or in locked cabinets to ensure participant privacy was not being breached. We placed several controls on our documents. Every document had a watermark for classification. We developed asset register with risk classification. The risk classification was not limited to the devices itself, but to the personnel who used them to the information generated from these assets. The higher the risk of those personnel or their work devices had to be more secure. We built standalone server rooms with authorized access and environmental controls. In 2017 recertification, software applications were better controlled for information security. Our medical team would obtain outsourced results through secure FTP links. Equipment service engineers were provided with limited access to the equipment or application they were servicing or fixing under the supervision of QBB personnel. In 2022, ISO 2387 recommended standardization of the date format in application. The exercise was performed to ensure clinic and lab applications were date synced. ISBOR best practices states the repository should have a procedure for periodic verification of the inventory and associated data. Random sampling from each storage unit using a predefined acceptable quality level can be used for QC purposes. Similarly, ISO 2387 clause 7.7.7 states the biobank should verify the biological material inventory at planned intervals by a defined procedure. Those who are involved in this process, we know that the process of auditing the sample inventory is a cumbersome task requiring lots of man hours. We had to brainstorm on how we could audit this in the best possible manner. Lots of plans were developed and scrutinized. Finally, we set formula and criteria for inventory verification. My colleagues from the lab will elaborate more on this tomorrow. The next slide is about improvement using CLSI guidelines and Abacus tool. Process or method validation parameters and acceptance criteria was taken from CLSI guideline for our in-house QBB validation. CLSI ensures laboratory validation, regulatory compliance, instructs to follow stringent and most cost-effective validation procedures with respect of minimum requirements for analytical and clinical practice, which contributes to prevent errors and improve overall laboratory quality testing. Abacus tool is an Excel add-in having all incorporated statistical calculations according to CLSI and ISO 15189 standard for medical laboratories, which enhanced following the requirements in a systematic way. This is Qatar Biobank's CAP accreditation timeline. In 2019, QBB established a diagnostic lab for microarray chip for genotyping test. This required to be CAP accredited. We decided to obtain CAP accreditation for general, common, and molecular pathology checklist. In our first self-inspection in November 2019, we had about 77 deficiencies. Thereafter, QBB achieved its first accreditation with zero deficiencies and no recommendations. Similarly, in 2022, we re-accredited to ourselves with zero deficiencies and no recommendations. These slides talk about how we improved using CAP Standards proficiency testing program. The external proficiency testing was a big milestone for us. We purchased PT from a US PT accredited lab. The PT was for customized microarray chip for genotyping for clinical diagnostic. It was a split sample concordance analysis. We overcame major challenges in importing biological samples. In 2022, we purchased PT program from Integrated Biobank of Luxembourg, as recommended by ISBER. As CAP standards mandates, PT program should be minimum twice per year. We have adopted this practice into our research lab as well. Improvement using CAP standards for health and safety. In 2014, we had 9 general health and safety guidelines that sufficed ISO and Qatar's regulatory facility licensing requirements. However, CAP standards mandated more specific lab health and safety guidelines. We assigned official lab safety officers, committee and provided the personnel with training from the Hamad Medical Corporation laboratory, which was already CAP certified. This allowed us to build our safety documents with better knowledge and experience. Improvements using CAP standards. We purchased an Excel add-in software to assist in performing method and process validations to minimize statistical human intervened calculations. We collaborated with various international labs to provide us with PT programs. Sustainability in health and safety was created by competent safety officers, health and safety committees, and the policies and procedures to generate staff education and ongoing safety awareness. Over time, this comprehensive safety program made improvements and moved to the important goal of preventing staff injuries, loss, or deterioration of any samples. Embedding the CAP standards checklist into QMS framework set our staff on a learning and development projectile. We have better awareness and recognition in our community. Improvements using industry best practices and manufacturer recommendations. For Cryolab, we do not have any national safety regulations in Qatar for liquid nitrogen. Hence, QBB decided to procure the liquid nitrogen tanks, its infrastructure, and environmental safety controls only from an ISO 13485 certified manufacturer. The ISO 13485 specifies requirements for a quality management system where an organization needs to demonstrate its ability to provide medical devices and related services that constantly meet customer and applicable regulatory requirements. We ensure that the local authorized supplier is also certified to quality certifications. To further develop our liquid nitrogen safety plans and work instructions, we relied on the British Compressed Gases Association BCGA Code of Practice. For RNA storage, during a sample retrieval in 2019, we had a non-conformity in which we found 3 PAXgene tubes were found broken. Upon investigations with manufacturer, we found these tubes could be stored at a maximum minus 70 degrees Celsius, while we were storing at minus 80 degrees C. Manufacturer storage and RNA extraction recommendations were taken, and accordingly QBB work instruction was modified and staff training was provided. Our local supplier for the blood tubes was an ISO certified center. They had a clear process on raising concerns with manufacturers. Hence, within 3 weeks of incidents, we were able to close the short-term corrective action for this non-conformity. Regarding our MRI, QBB performs MRI whole body and brain scans as a part of our study protocol. Again, we do not have any national safety regulations in Qatar for MRI. We followed same procurement steps as we did with our cryolab. To further develop our MRI safety plan and work instructions, we use the American College of Radiology ACR guidance to document the best safety practices. When we purchase any new equipment, consumables that directly impact our sample's quality, or maintenance or calibration services, we ensure that our scope of purchase mentions that only a quality certified or a CE or a FDA certified manufacturers can participate in the scope of purchase. Exclusions are rarely done. We recommend our local supplier to have quality certifications to avoid any non-conformities during shipping, installation, validation, and training. In this slide, I'll brief you about the challenges while implementing these standards or certifications. The first challenge we faced is which standard or practice to adopt. We faced the same dilemma while choosing between ISO 9001 or 27001. Again, we had the same dilemma between CAP biorepository or ISO biobanking. In QBP, we purchased these standards, read through and tried to have an understanding, and then selected what is more efficient to adopt. We need to think carefully about what certification and accreditations we want and need, and how it will best benefit our organization. We need to consider the right time to start the journey of certification. The next challenge is while choosing a certification body, it's important to evaluate a few companies to select the best fit for your organization. 2 points to consider are if that agency utilizes the latest, most relevant standards and if they themselves have the latest accreditation. The timeline of certification training depends on numerous factors, including studying the requirements, the level of preparation of an organization, and the size and complexity of the organization. Each certification requires a sincere commitment of time and resources. Human resources remain the most challenging resource. We need to have the infrastructure set up, need to purchase several controls. This also requires considerable amount of time and money. You need to do a resource needs analysis to ensure you evaluate these factors. Staff needs to be trained and competent. This requires huge efforts as we need to pull them out of daily operations. Internal auditors need training and a lot of experience before they can audit independently. This again requires skills and training. As we have limited authorized suppliers, we had to educate them on the requirements of temperature controlled supply chain, providing calibration certificates with criteria, inclusion of reagent lot number in delivery records, and more. Renewal cycles. Every certification has a renewal cycle. CAP is every 2 years for re-accreditation. ISO 9001 and 27001 is a 3 years recertification, and ISO 2387 is every 2 years. They happen at various months of the year, so we are all in a vicious cycle of audits and continuous improvement. The pros and cons of quality certifications. The pros are, it definitely helps you to understand your organization better, focus more on quality, you improve your products and services, you improve morale and job satisfaction, you improve customer satisfaction. The cons to these are certification process are complicated and requires greater accountability. More than one standard exists for any industry. Auditor's perspective matters. An auditor may require more documents or less documents. The cost involved to comply with the standards, the cost involved for certification itself. The key benefits using the certification or accreditation tools. Quality is something every organization strives for. Certification ensures your stakeholders that your practices meets industry standards. You will be able to gain trust of your stakeholders, minimize risks, reduce inefficiency, improve customer feedback. This trust becomes a cornerstone between us and our researchers, participants, employees, suppliers, legal bodies, etc. This in turn helps increase collaborations and revenue. In QBB, we strongly believe that now we are not just a sample and data biorepository, but we are also a knowledge repository. We have a wealth of validated know-hows or SMEs, which allows us to further streamline our processes, resources, and the way we work. Certifications has definitely empowered us all. Quality is not just an act or habit. We believe it's a language. When we communicate with our colleagues or peers from other research institutes or organizations, certification serves as a badge of excellence. Using this language of quality significantly increases our morale and reputation. Once you practice any standards or best practices, you build a culture of quality. It makes you keep learning. Regulation changes, standards are revised, technologies get updated, and this gives us all an opportunity to be adaptable and flexible to changes. As I conclude our day one session, obtaining and implementing certification standards or best practices, I believe, is a win-win situation for us all. I acknowledge everyone's efforts here at Qatar Biobank in achieving it all within the last decade. On behalf of Dr. Eleni and I, we would like to thank International 100K Plus Cohorts Consortium for giving us this opportunity to showcase the work of Qatar Biobank. Please register and join my colleagues in the next sessions to know more about us. Thank you and have a nice day.